Hi guys, this is going to be just a short Wednesday one, but I think it's such a fun sketch. I really wanted to share it with you. Now this was done with these sepia fine liners, which I'm sure you've seen me use on this channel now a few times, and it was just done with the 0.5 or the 0.1 and then the 0.5, and I used the brush, and you see them here, the brush, to get these big fat outlines, and I think it was just such a really lovely little sketch. But right, so let's get on with it. Let's just crack on. So there's no reference image for this one. It's literally just a really quick process. So what I'm doing here is I am going in with some French Ultramarine, which is a very, very bright colour, and it's not normally a sky colour. Well, it is a sky colour, you can use it for skies, but I really like its poppy, silly, daft nature. I'm using a particularly wide brush, well, wide for an A5 piece really, and I'm just going straight in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create quite a linear sky. Now what I mean by linear is, you can see, is I'm just doing some straight lines and using this big fatty boom batty brush. Now the right hand side is going to have some more kind of vertical elements in, and as you get further to the left hand side of the picture, it's going to have some more horizontal elements in terms of how the perspective, if you could call it that, in the sky is kind of working there. So there's some like vertical elements you can see I'm doing there, and then we have a horizontal element on the left hand side, and I'm purposefully, leaving some areas. I don't want to do it all. I'm trying not to necessarily paint the chimney pots. I'm trying to not necessarily paint the chimney pots because I want them to be a pop of orange as we get further on. But you can see where this page has got damaged, and it's pooling in those areas. It's not so good, but anyway, it matters not. So there we go, a little spot there, and that's the sky done. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that. Do you like that? Do you think it's a bit oversimplified? Do you think it's nice? Is it attractive? Yeah, I love it. I really like the kind of graphical feel of it. I think it's got a lot of energy and interest without being sort of hackneyed or twee even. So the next stage, and this is not waiting for it to dry, is I'm taking some of this really poppy Pyrol Orange, and I'm going to do this sort of Pantile roof. If you've ever been to like Robin Hood's Bay in North Yorkshire, or any of those seaside towns on the northeast coast, you'll notice that there's a lot of Pantiles, a lot of these yellow tiles, and they were carried actually as ballast by a lot of ships as they travelled up and down the coast. Mainly, actually, I think a lot of them were made in Belgium and in Flemish construction yards. So there was when we took produce over in the 17 and 1800s to Holland and Belgium, we would take wool or whatever over, and would come back with a lot of Pantiles, and that's why particularly on this stretch of the coast you see them an awful lot on houses. Anyway, random history wobbles. So again, I'm using that sort of perspective technique, slightly the same as the sky, using this wide brush, and again it's just focusing the eye to the sort of far right of the picture there, and putting a couple of splashes of green over there obviously, and getting some in the sky, some on the thing, it doesn't matter, some on the houses. So there we go, and that's, you could really leave that there. I don't think there'd be any shaming saying that's it, I've finished, because I mean it's lovely, isn't it? It's really lively, it's got bags of energy, it's got a really kind of nice feeling to it. But the stone in some of these little cottages, it's quite a honey colour. So I'm going to keep going. And I'm not 100% sure this was necessarily the right way to do it, actually. I think in retrospect, what would have given me a bit of a cleaner picture ultimately in the end would be to do this stage and dry it as is now, not forgetting to do the house on the right, of course. So I think what would have been nice would have been to dry that there with the hairdryer and then go in next with the shadow layer. But what I do here, which is a little bit controversial, is I go in and start putting shadows in when it's still a wet in wet wash, and that means that the shadows effectively don't have a crisp edge, they have a soft edge. And that is one of the things about shadows, particularly on a bright and sunny day, you will notice is they have very hard edges, and it's often the edge that makes you realise there's a shadow there, if that makes sense. So I think I've realised that I perhaps shouldn't have done it now, but I'm doubling down. I'm just going in quite dark, really. But yeah, it's interesting, these little sketches where you're not really setting yourselves any goals. There's no outcomes that you're trying to achieve. You're just having a play, and that's where you discover things. And often you'll think, oh, I made a mistake there, but you could look back and you could go, oh, actually that worked really well, or oh, if I did that slightly differently and developed it, I could do X, Y, Z. And that's where play is so important. Right, so I think that's due a hairdry now. Now, as you can see, now it's been dried, that is not half as dark, that shadow area, so it's not actually that bad. And I can go in and I can put an extra bit of shadow in, but make sure it does have a crisp edge, and that's going to help us to that's going to save the day. You can see there I didn't put any on because it was a bit too small, that area. So yes, I'm just adding some shadow in and back onto these gable ends now. I'm trying to get an even distribution of that paint. So that looks really good, and I think really there's nothing really wrong with that there. So I'm going to hairdry that again. There we go, and it's come back from the hairdry. And then what I've got here is a big massive cheat, is one of my kids' felt tips, and this is a bright orange felt tip, and I'm going to use this just for really quickly drawing in those chimney pots, because I want them to be a colour pop. I want them to be quite vibrant, and I don't mind the fact that they're a slightly more vibrant colour than the Pantiles. I don't mind that at all. I quite like that actually. And that orange and the blue just sit so beautifully together, don't they? Now the last stage here, which is somewhat controversial, perhaps is too much of a strong word, but is actually you wouldn't have whites. You know, if you were using the gel pen to put in these window frames, it would be a grey. Now what you can do is you can use the gel pen straight in with this, you know, quite bright white, and then really quickly put a wash over the top of it, and then use a tissue, and that will take away a lot of that very, very strong white, and it will leave you with a sort of slightly transparent white. And I think ultimately that's what I did with this, but that was only after it had been sitting for a few days, so I haven't actually captured that here. But it doesn't matter. I mean, I still think it's nice to be able to see some of those window frame details. So the thing that really I wanted to show you guys this was primarily because it was about the geometry of the painting, you know, the way that I've done the sky and the way that I've done the ground there. I thought that was quite interesting from a stylistic point of view. And obviously it's a quick bit of watercolor. The painting I think in total was something like 12 minutes, and obviously the drawing is going to be, you know, 10 minutes to do, so you're looking at maybe 25 minutes. It's not a particularly detailed sketch, but yeah, I'll have a zoom around and we can have a look at some of those details a bit more close up. So let me know what you think of that. Did you enjoy it? Do you think it looks good, or do you think that some of the shadows are a little bit too dark? Yeah, let me know. And yeah, like and subscribe and all that jazz, and thanks guys, thanks for popping round and staying to the end. We'll see you again. Bye bye.